So I pulled out a few things from my pantry today just to show you what you might use when you're making some Italian food. So of course we're studying Italy, we're in the Italian region, and there's some things that you'll find in all parts of Italy, like these beautiful tomatoes. Beautiful vine-ripened tomatoes that are grown in Italy because the climate is so hot and tropical. So these tomatoes are perfect just to eat ripe, just as they are right now, maybe with a little mozzarella or with some Italian meats. So here on my platter, I have prosciutto, supersad, and a little gabagool, which is a beautiful side dish with some crusty Italian bread, a little bit of meat, and some fresh tomatoes. Look at that, delicious. All these meats are smoked and cured and perfect to eat with something that needs a little bit of salt, like fresh mozzarella. All right, now, when we're talking about tomatoes that we're gonna make a marinara sauce or a beautiful sauce that you might put a little braciole into, we're going to use peeled tomatoes. And these peeled tomatoes are perfect to use for tomato sauce because the seeds are out, and those seeds are what make the sauce bitter. But without the seeds, we're gonna make a beautiful tomato sauce. We also have tomato paste for when we're thickening our tomato sauce, so it'll be nice and thick. This is a product of Italy as well, and every time we make tomato sauce, whether it be marinara or with meat, we're gonna use some paste. So we've got that. We also have some Parmesan cheese, which is a nice cheese to grate with. We're gonna put a little of this in our sauce as well, but every meal we always sprinkle a little Parmesan on top. We also have two different kinds of pasta right here. We have a few fusilli linguine, which as you can see, it's shaped a little bit differently than a regular linguine. Kind of fun, kind of curly, reminds me of a curly hair. And then we have a pappardelle, which is a tight fettuccine, which is all in a little nest. So two different kinds of pasta that are kind of fun to cook with, fun to explore different pastas. Now, over here, we have all things Italian. We have olive oil. Every meal starts with olive oil. We have garlic. It's already peeled for us. It smells so great. And in case of a vampire apocalypse, we are safe. And then we have some beautiful basil, which we're going to use in our tomato sauce. And it also keeps our refrigerator smelling delightful. Italian. All right, welcome back. We have all our ingredients out, and now we're gonna make some basic red tomato sauce. Some people call it marinara, some people call it gravy, but truth be told, gravy is only something that's made that has drippings of meat in it. So technically, we're making a marinara sauce until we actually add in some meat. So here we have our basic ingredients. We have peeled plum tomatoes. Now these have no salt added because between the Parmesan cheese that we're gonna add in and our own salt, we don't really need any extra salt. So these tomatoes, I've opened 2 cans of tomatoes, and these tomatoes are right here. Look at these nice big juicy tomatoes. Now what I have next to these juicy tomatoes is an immersion blender. Oh, it's not plugged in. I have the immersion blender because there we go. The immersion blender has a sharp blade at the bottom, and the reason it's an immersion blender is because you can immerse it into the tomatoes. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna crush these tomatoes up so that they're not the big whole tomatoes. Now, some people like to do it by hand, but I feel that the immersion blender gives us a nice even mix. So we're gonna save that for just a minute. But right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna move over and we're gonna get our pot ready to get started. I have some extra virgin olive oil right here, and I'm gonna pour in about 1/8 to 1/4 of a cup olive oil. Really just enough to cover the bottom. And I always like to use olive oil because why wouldn't you? And in this container right here, I have garlic. Now notice I didn't chop it, I didn't crush it. It's whole cloves of garlic and shallots. So shallots are kind of a cross between an onion and garlic. They're a little less fragrant than onion, but they work really well in tomato sauce. So I'm gonna put these in the bottom of the pan, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this over on the stove top, and I'm gonna start it up on like a medium-high heat. Now this is a nice big pot, so let's see, what do we have here? I'm gonna start it off at about 4. Now, all I want to do is saute that garlic and saute those shallots until they're a little bit brown. You never want to burn the garlic because that gives it a really nasty, bitter fragrance and a bitter taste to it. So I'm gonna let that start, and at the same time, I'm gonna take my tomatoes so that they're all set and ready to go in. Now, I usually like to do this in the sink so that if it splatters, but I did put it into a large glass jar. And again, I'm breaking up these whole tomatoes. Now, while I do this, you can see I have some crushed red pepper. It's red chili pepper flakes. Gives a little zing to our tomato sauce. And also Parmesan cheese. Parmesan cheese gets added in kind of towards the end. Now, every family has their own version of tomato sauce. People like to use different kinds of tomatoes, different kinds of sauces, different kinds of pastes. I personally like the Tutta tomatoes. I like this tomato paste because it's from Italy. I like to add Parmesan cheese, red pepper flakes, and sometimes if I have a little extra red wine, I like to add red wine into the sauce as well. But for today, no red wine. All right, our tomatoes are ready to go. Almost ready to go. Now, if you do see seeds, the seeds are really what makes the tomato sauce bitter. So if you have seeds in here, like I can see some of the tomato seeds bopping around, I might at the end of the recipe add about a tablespoon of sugar, and that just counterbalances the bitterness of the seeds. All right, this is now ready to go. So let's just wait 1 minute until we have our olive oil and our garlic and our shallots kind of softened and ready. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the tomato sauce in. So give us 2 seconds. All right, as you can see, into our big pot here, we have the shallots and the garlic nice and sauteed. It's actually getting a little bit more brown than I'd like it to. I'm using a different pot this time, and this pot wouldn't be my first choice to make sauce in, but because we're making a little bit extra, I wanted something bigger. So when you purchase pots and pans, you want a really nice, heavy metal. You don't want them too thin. The thinner they are, the more chance you have from burning. But this is a nice pot. Usually this pot would be something that you would boil pasta in. You can boil a lot of pasta because it's a big pot. All right, so I'm taking the garlic and the shallots out. Some people save this and they use it in their meatballs, or they cut it up and they put it back in the sauce. So we'll just save that for later. And now I have my tomatoes that are all crushed and ready to go. And I'm gonna very carefully pour it in. Now you can see that it's hot, so you have to be careful. Might even be a good idea to take it off the stove, but I knew that my pot was deep enough, and that's why I got a bigger spoon. Now, when you're Italian and you see this big wooden spoon, this sends flashbacks to you. So sorry if that's doing that to anybody. All right, now in this big pot with the sauce, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some pepper. This is just basic black pepper, just a little bit. And we're gonna add salt. Now we talked about the fact that our tomatoes weren't salted, so you do wanna add a good amount of salt, not too much, but a good amount of salt. And you wanna add just enough, and you can always add more, but remember, you can't take it out, you can always add more. And when you add in the Parmesan cheese in just a little bit, that Parmesan cheese is also going to add some salt to it because Parmesan is super salty. Now, I have some parsley I'm gonna add in. Kick up the heat just a little bit. Now, this is a gas stove. So gas stoves are a little bit harder. I'm sorry, it's an electric stove. Electric stoves are a little bit harder to regulate than gas. Gas is simple, high, low. But this is a little bit harder to regulate. I'm gonna add a little parsley in there. And then I'm gonna also add, I've already cut up a little fresh basil. I'm gonna cut up and add in some of the basil into there. Smells good already. All right, and then, because I do like things spicy, I'm gonna add just a few crushed red pepper flakes. If you're making a really hot sauce, you would call it a fra diavolo sauce. Fra diavolo sauce is something that you would make if you were doing mussels or clams or a bunch of fish. You would make mussels fra diavolo, meaning the sauce is a little extra spicy. And I believe that means, and I do have to check Google Translate, but I do believe that means hot like the devil, but I'm not exactly sure of the exact translation. Okay, now, while this is cooking, we want it to come to a boil, but then we want to turn it down. We don't want it to keep boiling. So we're going to wait for it to come to a boil, and then we're going to lower it. And then at the very end, we're going to add some Parmesan cheese, and we're going to also, I prepared some braciole, and we're going to add that in. But just to show you, this is what a basic marinara sauce should look like. And then when maybe a half hour, 45 minutes, we'll tweak it up to add the Parmesan and the braciole in. So for right now, we're just gonna let this cook away. We're gonna enjoy how the smell of the house when we add all the tomatoes and the fragrance. It's gonna smell great. So for right now, we'll be right back. All right, well, welcome back. It's been about a half hour, and I feel like Stregonona over here stirring my big cauldron of sauce. But I've got some beautiful marinara sauce. It smells fabulous here in the house. And what I'm gonna do to kind of finish off the sauce is I'm gonna add some Parmesan cheese. I buy nice freshly grated Parmesan. I would say, let's go with a quarter to a half of a cup of Parmesan cheese. Just get stirred right in. And again, some people add Parmesan cheese, some people don't. I like to add it in. It makes for a nice sauce. I have an aunt who actually starts off her marinara sauce with a little bit of butter and a little bit of olive oil, adds the tomatoes, and then a lot of Parmesan cheese. So like I said, everybody does it a little bit differently, but this is how I like to make my marinara sauce, which means without meat. Now, if I was going to add meat, I might add something like meatballs, of course. Those are always a family favorite. Or I prepared today a braciole. Now, braciole is very thinly sliced steak. And what I do is when I have the steak out flat, I shouldn't have rolled them all, but when I have them out flat, what I simply do is I add Parmesan cheese, a little bit of parsley, and I added some of those onions that we saw from the bottom of our pan before. I added that in along with some diced up garlic, fresh garlic, and I tie it with some string, the string that you know, is made to tie meat up with. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cook it in the sauce. I'm gonna put it right in here. I'm gonna cook it up, and this is gonna add flavor to our marinara sauce, and it's really gonna make it a meat sauce, right? Because we've got meat in it. So this is gonna be even better, guys, with some meat in it. All right, so what I'm gonna do, thanks to these handy dandy little strings, I'm gonna lower them in, and I'm just gonna let them cook off. Look at that little guy, made a little baby braciole. Now, when the braciole comes out of the sauce, you want to make sure you do remove that string. You can cut it with a pair of kitchen shears. And then for a bigger piece like this, I would just slice it like you would a steak. This little guy right here, that's like the perfect size for an individual braciole. So we'll lower him in. And this guy, I tied in a bow. So here he goes. All right, and we're just going to make sure they're submerged. And we're going to just let them cook in there. You know, depending on how thick the meat is, you're really gonna have to eyeball it. I would say 45 minutes to an hour just to be safe. And really, this sauce, you can't really cook it for too long. You don't want it to be boiling, but the longer it simmers, the more all those flavors are gonna come together, which is gonna make for a really nice sauce. So enjoy. This was the first step in how to make marinara sauce. And again, if you know how to make a basic marinara sauce, you can really add to that marinara sauce by making it a cream sauce. You add a little heavy cream in, and you've got like a cream sauce. You could add some vodka and cream sauce, and you could make something like penne alla vodka. But every good sauce starts with a basic marinara. So this is really the foundation and the key to how to do it. And if your grandmother's watching this and she's saying, that's not how I make it. Like I said, everybody tweaks their own recipe just a little bit from family to family. So this is how I do it. And I don't know, my family seems okay with it. I'm gonna grab the lid for this pot. I'm gonna put it on loosely, and I'm gonna let it simmer until it's done, which is about another hour. And then I can serve it over ravioli, I can serve it over linguine, I can serve it over really anything. So enjoy. Buon appetito.